This week we have an interesting variety of stories, including a look into the world of fitness as well as gender transitioning.
And don't forget, Grundy, about the lawyer who wants to get stronger through weightlifting.
All this and more starting right now on this episode of The Journal.
Welcome to this week's episode of The Journal. I'm your host and struggling comedian, Aidan Popiel.
And I'm your host and prospering comedian, Josh Grundy. There's a lot of interesting content to cover this week, including a very special performance from Cameron Penny at the end of the show.
And each piece of content we are going to show you has been created by none other than our very own Centennial College students. Grundy, why do you have a pizza box with you right now?
That's because, Aidan, our first doc is all about the hunt for the best pizza place in the city.
Well, that's pretty cool. Hey, do you think if we asked the producers, they would let us eat pizza in the studio? A real question.
Not a chance. But until then, it's pizza time with Riangelo.
These are three of my favorite pizzas. They're all below $5 and from local Toronto restaurants. Taste of Pizza, Papaccio, and Brothers Pizza. I've invited two of my friends to try these pizzas and see which one is the best.
Hi, I'm Jarren. This is Ricky. Today we're trying 3 different pizzas from 3 different places to determine which one's the best.
Yeah.
This is the first one. Taste of Pizza.
I do like how it's not super thick, so it's like certain other pizzas, when you bite into it, you take quite a while to chew to get through, but this is actually very like light, and I like how the bottom's like crispy, so like every single bite you just get that satisfying crunch.
I like the pepperoni too. Like, it doesn't taste like the normal pepperoni you get from like your average pizza place, like Pizza Hut or that kind of thing. It's much more, I don't know, like gourmet.
Yeah.
I like the garlicky taste for the crust because it essentially makes it so I don't need to dip it in anything. Like, it's one of the rare pizza crusts I've had that I actually enjoy without a dipping sauce.
So up next we have Papa CEO's pizza.
All right.
There's not like a lot of tomato sauce flavor coming through, but like the pepperoni, you definitely, there's quite a strong flavor to that pepperoni. And
Yeah, it tastes more like a garlic, almost like a garlic sauce rather than tomato. Like, you get more garlicky and like oregano stuff.
It's interesting because like when people think of pepperoni pizza, it's just like they don't think of like all these other little kind of factors that go into making a pizza taste distinct from one another, and I thought it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, like you can see it right there. There's almost like no tomato sauce, but I still took a bite, and it was good. So the crust review on this one, it's not quite as crispy as the last one, and it doesn't quite have that garlicky taste in the crust, which I appreciated a lot in the last one. But it's still really solid, and I don't think I need a dipping sauce for it. Final of the 3 pizzas from Brothers Pizzeria. Everyone knows it. We've been there before. Let's see how it compares.
Alright. For me, at least, there's kind of a problem with like the amount of balance of the kind of flavors that I'm tasting, because depending on where you bite, you don't get like that consistent taste of the previous 2, where you can have like this little garlic taste, or you taste like more like tomato sauce. For this, it's like if I bite near the pepperoni, like I will taste more of that, but if I don't, like if you just bite the cheese, I actually taste more like just the grease. Like it's not so much of a pleasant feeling, in my opinion, at least.
And even the pepperoni is like much thicker. It kind of tastes like there's too much. Like, I wish they were a little skinnier. Well, see right under there, you can see all the chunks of tomato too. Can you trust the crust? On this pizza, not so much. I'm not as big of a fan of the crust. It's just a little too bready and a little too crispy for me, and I'd probably need a dipping sauce to enjoy it.
Taste of pizza was my favorite because it was just consistency, whether it was flavor, whether it was just the general like texture and crunch of it. Like every single bite was crunchy, but it wasn't like my mouth felt like I was eating a whole bunch of grease, or there were certain flavors that was like overpowering it.
I liked the Popiel one because it had like that mix of the juices in it, but it was still light. And I also like the pepperoni in it the best because it kind of was crispy-ish and then still had the juices from the pepperoni inside. And it kind of was just the most consistent one all the way through. But the king of the crust was the first one. If you could put those two together, perfect.
Man, Grundy, I could really go for a slice of pizza after looking at that doc.
That's because, Aidan, the best thing about pizza time is it's cheesy. You get to unwind. You eat your slice, and I'll eat mine. But right now, it's time to venture into the world of vegan living, as long as you're okay with dairy-free cheese, that is.
And for either health or morality, or sometimes both, many people choose to walk the path of veganism.
It really feels like we've entered our zeitgeist. It feels like this is the first time in history that so many people have adapted to the vegan lifestyle. This next documentary is about a woman named Andrea Frank, who is a mother as well as an ethical vegan. Let's take a look at her life.
This is Andrea Frank, a devoted ethical vegan and veganism advocate who has been using social media to inspire others to become vegans and to live active lives.
So the inspiration behind my Instagram pages was to inspire other people to go vegan. My Toronto Vegan Mom page is really about showing how to be a mother and how to raise a plant-based or vegan child, as well as remain a vegan parent yourself. And then my Toronto Vegan Fit Mom page is really about how to fit in fitness as much as physically possible, and show that you can be vegan and gain muscle and be very strong and able-bodied. I stopped eating meat 7 years ago after watching a documentary on the animal agriculture business. And then after about a year without eating meat, I watched some additional documentaries about other animal-based industries and decided to go vegan at that point. I always add a protein to my smoothies. I usually do a hemp-based protein, either the full seeds or a hemp powder. And this is a great source of protein, of copper, of magnesium, and iron. And for some sweetness, I like to add some natural dates, a little bit of sugar.
Andrea considers herself an ethical vegan.
To me, ethical veganism is to abstain from using or exploiting animals as far as practical and possible. So that extends to not using products that are tested on animals, not wearing leather or fur or silk, obviously not eating any animal products or any animal byproducts, and not going to entertainment that may exploit animals, such as a circus or a zoo. Delicious and nutritious.
Welcome back to the Journal. I am currently here with the director of Andrea Frank, Bianca Mattison. Bianca, thank you very much for coming here. A couple of quick questions about your doc. Why did you choose the topic of veganism for it?
Well, veganism is a very hot issue right now. I mean, every other person you meet is either vegan or going vegan or thinking about going vegan. So, I just wanted to explore the issue some more.
Oh, that's really cool. In your doc, you talk about ethical veganism. Is there such thing as evil veganism?
I think it would be unethical veganism.
Okay.
I don't know if there's such a thing, but based on what Andrea said in her interview, I mean, that would be anyone who is not in veganism for moral reasons, someone that doesn't necessarily care about, animal rights and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, that's really cool. Do you think after doing that whole process of filming that doc, did you want to become a vegan?
I actually tried it some time ago, lasted only 6 months. I missed chicken too much.
Yeah,
so.
I think I would miss chicken too. It does taste really good. Well, thank you very much, Bianca. Next up, though, we have a very interesting doc of a lawyer who wants to become much more stronger and does powerlifting. So here is where Titans gather.
My name is James Damaskinos. I am a lawyer, and I am a person who trains in powerlifting. When I started to get into powerlifting training, I initially started trying to train the big movements at commercial gyms. That's the bench, the squat, and the deadlift. But I just generally found that, particularly when it came to deadlifting, that people had prejudices about that kind of movement, particularly when you start to load the barbell with heavy weights. Remember one time I was training at an Anytime Fitness in Toronto. I remember asking about what I could use potentially to perform what's called a deficit deadlift. It's essentially where you kind of stand on a plate or a platform or a wooden plank to make the deadlift movement a little bit more difficult, to kind of train the sort of initiation of the deadlift. And I asked the manager what I could use, and the manager was essentially pretty unequivocal in saying, "We don't deadlift at this gym," which I thought was an absolutely preposterous statement. I took that as, you're not really welcome here. You can't do these movements. So I left, and I've had experiences like that in other gyms, other locations. It's just, sometimes a product of heavy lifting. I first started becoming aware of the warehouse when a really good friend of mine knew Grove, who's the owner of this gym, and Grove was asking for help setting up the first warehouse. So I thought I'd come out, and there I kind of met some really strong dudes, and I sort of fell in love with the atmosphere of the warehouse. This is the wall of all of the personal records, essentially, that people have made over the time that they've been members of the warehouse. And as you can see, there are some people who are legitimately strong, like Matt Gibson at the top here, squats 600 pounds, deadlift 706. Adam Jackson, who's training right over there, has a 573-pound squat, 650-pound deadlift. And yeah, there's even people like Rebecca, who's been training, who has a 275-pound squat, 375-pound deadlift, 180-pound bench, and that's impressive. Most men could not make those kinds of numbers, so some really strong people here. That's the wall. For me, there's something profoundly spiritual about, confronting my physical limits. And, the way I train today, my physical limits are such that most people, are weights that most people don't touch. And that's the one thing that I can say about the warehouse that has been such a tremendous experience, is that I feel welcome here. I've trained at other powerlifting gyms, and none of those gyms seem to match the community that's out here. There are insanely strong dudes here. There are insanely strong women here. They have a wealth of experience among them. I felt welcomed essentially from the minute I started training until today. I've always felt like this is a place for me. And it's a place where I can be inspired by truly exceptional lifters and, continue along my journey of getting as strong as I possibly can.
Photography is an excellent way for one to express themselves.
Now, I can't say who, but it's an amazing feeling when certain members of certain franchises begin recognizing your work.
It's even cooler when it's well-edited photos of Star Wars figures.
Oh, Carney, don't ruin the surprise, man. Yes, this next doc is about an up-and-coming photographer and VFX artist. Stay tuned because we have more stories to come, but first, here's Cam Sharpe.
Hi, my name is Cam Sharpe. I'm a visual effects artist. I grew up in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. It is a medium-sized city southwest of Toronto. There isn't much of the media industry there whatsoever, so I started on my own in terms of getting into filmmaking. I went to Humber College for their advanced film diploma program from 2014 to 2017. I tried everything and I hated everything except for visual effects. I started off doing toy photography. I actually ended up getting one of my toy photography photographs / posters published in a toy photography magazine, the Exclude Collective 100 project. I have a print copy of it. My sister, my cousin, my best friend from Scotland, my parents have a print copy somewhere. Seeing a lot of people have copies of my work is really cool because I can say, I made that and it's in print form and you can show it to people. But I haven't really done toy photography since November just because I've been so enthralled by doing live action composites that it's a unique and new challenge. Turn your body a bit, it's like profile.
It's like this?
Yeah, and look up. To get from an idea to finished piece varies depending on what I want to do. My style of posters and artwork really features over-the-top lighting that gives a lot of strong and very contrasty highlights. I really like this one. For this specific piece, I knew that the sun was going to be the primary source of light. So what I did was I would create the sun in Photoshop just using a lens flare, and then to create the light fall off onto his body, I would use a combination of coloring with hue saturation so I can make it like a nice orangey yellow glow, and then I can use exposure as adding the really nice highlights within the glow. And that itself is a fun challenge, trying to take a photograph and changing how it's lit entirely so it fits the purposes that I want to. I don't know where it's going, where it'll end. I'm just going to keep on just trying to pump out as much work as possible. So let's see where it goes. If it makes you happy, then go for it. Work your butt off. Become famous, kid. Do all that. But if it doesn't, then it isn't for you, but that's okay. Directing wasn't for me. I can't direct, I can't act, I can't produce, I definitely cannot do sound. So, you can find your thing, and remember, I believe in you.
Welcome back. The next story that we have covers a very interesting life experience.
Now, this topic is quite controversial, Grundy, and that's what makes it so much more enticing. It's about change and transition from female to male.
It really is an incredible age that we live in where we have the knowledge, wealth, and medical ability to help somebody on their way to becoming the person that they always knew that they were.
Yeah, before we show the next story, we have the director live on the air with us right now.
Haley, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your subject?
So I met Robin in high school, beginning of high school, and I don't know, we just kind of clicked. He was really into drama and theater and that kind of thing, and he's really outgoing, and we just had a lot of fun together, and he's just a really great guy.
And what was it like documenting such an important time in his life?
It was almost like seeing it a second time. Like, I saw it the first time when it was happening real time, but then I got to film it and I kind of got a spin on it, and I got to show my story to everyone and explain it to people and show them what he really is.
I only really have one last question. Is there anything that you want to say to people who don't understand why someone would choose to go through with something like this?
Try to understand it and just accept it, and yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us today,
Thank
Haley.
you.
This is Robin.
Hi, my name's Robin. I enjoy things like theater and dogs and macaroni and cheese. I'm also trans. I mean, I didn't really notice anything was wrong, quote unquote, until puberty. But when I was younger, it's like you don't really realize that there's a difference between boys and girls, because when I was hanging out with my friends, predominantly guys, it didn't really, We didn't really see any differences in each other. That's like the innocence of youth, which is great. Of course, you grow out of that when you hit puberty and things start changing. And for me, when things started changing, that's because I was like, okay, I mean, I kind of understand what's going on. I don't like it, but I understand why this is happening. And it was just really, really, really awkward because I was very disproportionate. So it just made me feel even more self-conscious about it. But I was like, oh, all little girls must just hate their bodies during this time, right? I mean, that's normal. I was in so much denial, mostly because I was scared how people would react, how my family would react. So I would consider myself, during my years in high school before grade 11, I was in the closet because I didn't even want to speak the possibility of those words, like that being me, like no way. But then it just got way too much, and the spiral of self-hate started again. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm non-binary. And like I sat in that circle for a good amount of time, because I knew, like, at the time I didn't really know, but like I felt like this isn't 110% me, but I am more comfortable than I was. My parents, both of my parents, like, accept me and love me, and I feel very privileged to have that, because there's so many kids in my situation who do not have any accepting parents, do not go to like an accepting school, do not have accepting friends, usually turn to suicide or self-harm because they just have nobody. So I feel like the situation I'm in, I'm very privileged. I'm like a white, middle-class trans guy who has accepting parents and who has access to surgeries and hormones. And I don't forget that for a second. Like, I feel very, very blessed. Like, I'm not saying that every day is a walk in the park. I still deal with dysphoria. I still deal with assholes. But I'm nowhere near some of the other people who I know, actually, who are just so afraid to be themselves. And I feel like with the power that I have, it falls on me, but also falls on everybody else who's in a similar situation as me, who have this power to help, like, whoever we can and just be there for people. Because if you think about it, I wish I had somebody like me when I was going through this and like questioning myself, to be like, you can be whoever you want to be. Like, if you feel more comfortable being this way, be that way. Don't be afraid, like, don't hold yourself back because of an inconvenience to other people.
Wow, that was really quite eye-opening, Grundy.
It sure was. It's always really interesting to see stories that are so personal to people.
And our last story is about a mock disaster and how students from Centennial come together to try and aid in times of crisis. And don't go away, because we have a very special live performance from Cameron Penny coming right up after.
Emergency services deal with tragedy every day, but how do they prepare for large-scale disasters? Centennial College believes that preparation should begin in school. Once a year, they create a large-scale mock disaster for their nursing, paramedic, police, and firefighting students, because the best way to prepare for the unthinkable is to practice the unthinkable. This year's mock disaster is a large apartment fire. Victims, played by actors, will number in the hundreds, and it is the job of Centennial Emergency Services students to ensure they have the best chance at survival.
So if you want to communicate back and ask for guidance, DC1 is there, okay? DC1 has a scribe. June?
I need to be able to say to you, like, time it. I need to stop. I need to step away.
That needs to go with the patient to the hospital. Okay? The hospital will not know what to do with the patient if it does not, they don't show up there. There's a place for the number of the patient that they have written on their hand in black to write there on the chart.
Jessica is a fourth-year nursing student, and this is her first time participating in an event at this scale. As a nurse, she is the final stop for the victims in the mock disaster.
So bedside nursing, it's a lot of, depends on where you are. So if you're in ICU, it's going to be one-on-one. In ER, which I'm more familiar with, it's usually a 4-patient ratio. And you usually do the orders that the MD prescribes. So a lot of medications, a lot of nursing skills in general. And you're the one who recognizes any adverse findings and reports them back to the MD. And basically you're there throughout the whole patient experience until they're discharged.
Taking one step down the ladder of saving lives, Jasmine and Menashe oversee getting the victims from the scene to safety. As paramedic students, they must rush the victim to hospital, giving them the best chance at survival.
I think it helped us learn how to work in such a high-stress emergency situation. We got to work with different types of healthcare workers, first response workers, like police officers, firefighters. Communication was a huge thing, and that's how things could run as efficiently as possible.
And it was good because we kind of got to see all aspects of the job, pretty much. Like we got to see patient care from start to finish in like you said, like a high-intensity disaster, and then do the full load the patient onto the stretcher and transport and actually like end care with transferring your patient from your bed to a hospital bed. So it was a great experience just to kind of work through all of that and communicate and learn to talk to everyone in the healthcare.
He's on an NRB at 15.
Sometimes paramedics are put in tough situations. Jasmine and Menashe were heading back to one of these scenarios.
Come on, hurry up! Come on! Don't just stand here looking at me. Hurry up!
Okay, we just need to contact our dispatch to let them know that we're rerouting.
Hurry up! Come on! That's not going to help you. Why are these guys wandering through here? Does nobody help this poor lady who's trying to help the unconscious? Oh my God! You guys just walked right by.
First responders, the heroes who risk their lives to get the victims of tragedy to medical staff who can help them. Although these policing and firefighting students know this disaster isn't real, they know preparation can be the difference between life and death out in the field.
Aidan, I'm going to be honest, I actually don't know how much I trust any of them to try and save my life, but hey, more power to them.
That's pretty harsh, Grundy. I mean, I think the story was actually rather well done.
Well, you're not wrong. It was definitely interesting, but it looks like that's all we have today for our show.
I'm your host, Aidan Popiel.
And I'm your host, Josh Grundy. Tune in on Monday at 2:30 for a look at the spirit of competition on the next episode of The Journal.
But before we go, here is our long-awaited performer, Cameron Penny.
Hi, Cameron.
How you doing?
So, what are you going to be playing for us today?
I'll be playing an original song called Call on Me.
That's really cool. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump right into it. Here is Cameron Penny.
Take it away.
When the world around you falls and you're out there on your own, when you call everyone you know, but they don't pick up the phone, you can call on me. You can call on me in the middle of the night. When you can't sleep, you can call on me. You can reach for me. You can call on me. When you feel like giving up, just remember how much you gave it. Don't go spending what you saved. There'll be more sunny days, 'cause you can call on me. You can call on me in the middle of the night when you can't sleep. You can call on me. You can reach for